I ultimately cost my vindictive manager his promotion and his career. And it all started with him trying to sabotage mine over my sacred Thursday night drinks. Looking back, he really did sign his own death certificate. It all began a few years ago when I got a job in a cinema. I was about 4 or 5 years older than most of my colleagues, for whom this was their first real job. Having a couple of jobs and a bit of maturity under my belt meant I quickly became a valued employee. In fact, I was so effective that they promoted me to supervisor within just 6 months. To the general manager, Mr. O'Connell, I was a Swiss Army knife. If the projection manager was at one of our other sites, I'd handle projection duties. When things got chaotic during busy periods, I was the calm in the storm, de-escalating potential problems before they could blow up. I was very good at my job, to the point where I'd often be left in charge of the entire building if a manager had to step out. We had 1 GM and 4 floor managers, and they all loved me because I made their jobs significantly easier. When I was on the clock, they didn't have to work as hard, and when it was quiet, they barely had to work at all. Another 2 years flew by, and then one of the floor managers announced she was leaving in 3 months. It was an unspoken certainty that I would get her position. The company always promoted from within, and frankly, I was head and shoulders above my coworkers in terms of experience and capability. This is where it gets interesting, and this is where we meet Declan. Let me paint a picture of Declan. He was short, fat, and balding. He had a piercing in his ear and carried himself with an air of coolness that he absolutely did not possess. Imagine David Brent from The Office, and you're pretty much there. He could be incredibly petty, so you wanted to stay on his good side to make your life easier. But what he did next was far beyond petty. Declan's main responsibility was the weekly stock take every Thursday. Coincidentally, I always worked the Thursday morning projection shift, which for years had led to a standing arrangement for drinks with my pals on Thursday nights. I absolutely loved my Thursday drinks, since I worked most weekends. This was my Saturday night. One Thursday, while I was doing my projection checks, the GM, Mr. O'Connell, told me that Declan had called in sick. He asked if I could cover the stock take. It was a brutal shift, 9 a.m. to 11:30 p.m., because you have to count all the retail stock after the cinema closes. But I figured, screw it, the brownie points would be worth it. The next week, I was scheduled for the stock shift again instead of my usual projection duties. I asked Mr. O'Connell what was going on, and he said Declan had specifically requested me. As much as the GM and I got along, he was always going to side with his manager over a supervisor. I went to Declan and explained that I had plans on Thursday nights. He just smiled and said, "Listen, dude, I'm actually doing you a favor. When the manager job comes up and you know how to do the stock take and orders, it will look fantastic. You'll 100% get the job." Declan made this offer thinking he was cementing his own position, completely unaware that in that moment, he wasn't just handing me a task. He was handing me the very weapon I would later use to engineer his downfall. I gritted my teeth and went along with it, telling myself it made sense to learn another part of the business. But every Thursday night, the reality was Declan sitting at his desk with his feet up while I did his entire job for him. The work wasn't hard, and after a month, it was a piece of piss, as they say. 3 months passed, and we were 1 week away from the manager's departure. The interview process began, but in a very strange twist. The owners decided to sit in and conduct the interviews themselves. I walked into the interview confident, but they hit me with it immediately. "How do you expect to be our manager if your timekeeping is so poor?" They had a list, a detailed printout of every time I had clocked in late, 5 minutes here, 7 minutes there. The thing is, our workplace had a take a penny, leave a penny culture with time. You might come in a few minutes late, but you'd always stay late when they needed you to, so it evened out. But these owners, they went to town on me. They had surveillance footage of me taking in a delivery, which wasn't even my job, without wearing a high-vis jacket. Your complete lack of concern for safety regulations is appalling. One of them, a woman named Ms. Walsh, said coldly. They presented emails from a few irate customers over 3 years, all taken completely out of context to make it look like I was in the wrong, even though I had handled each situation correctly. By that point, I had given up fighting my corner. I knew I wasn't getting the promotion. My coworker got the job instead, and if it couldn't be me, I was genuinely happy it was her. She was great at her job and would be a fine manager, but after giving so much to that company for 3 years, I felt a switch flip inside me. I started doing things half-assed. Why go the extra mile when it clearly wasn't appreciated? I was still stuck on stock duty on Thursday nights. One evening, while Declan was downstairs dealing with a customer, I was in the office inputting the figures. I accidentally closed the program. As I navigated back to it, I opened Declan's folder and saw a file named Discrepancies. I don't know why I clicked on it, but I did, and inside, I saw a folder with my own name on it. My heart hammered against my ribs. I clicked it. I felt fucking shocked. There were about 5 subfolders: lates, dangerous delivery, potential stealing, associates, and hungover. We've already covered the lates and the so-called dangerous delivery. The stealing one was a CCTV still of me leaning over a closed till, framed to look like I was hiding something, which was utter nonsense. Associates was just pictures of me chatting with coworkers when the cinema was quiet, and hungover contained screenshots from my Facebook of me being out the night before work. It was as clear as day. This bastard had compiled a dossier and handed it directly to the owners to sabotage me. This revealed Declan's greatest fatal flaw, his petty insecurity. He couldn't compete on merit, so he resorted to sabotage, never imagining that the person he was targeting was far more meticulous and patient than he could ever be. Finishing my shift that night was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I wanted to rip that earring out of his lobe and pop his baldy head like a pimple, but I played it cool. The following Monday, I asked for a word with Mr. O'Connell. I explained everything I'd found, emphasizing that it was a serious invasion of privacy. CCTV is for reviewing incidents, not for stalking employees. He looked grim and admitted he only found out about the dossier after my interview. The reason he hadn't conducted the interviews himself was because he was also leaving the company. He was a good man and didn't bullshit me. He said Declan had always hated me and was constantly bringing up little issues. He then strongly recommended I find a new job, because Declan was the front runner to become the new GM, and my life would become unbearable. I could have filed a complaint, but what was the point when the owners themselves had used the dossier against me? I could have taken him to court, but it seemed like too much hassle for too little payoff. I had a choice: spend the next 2 months looking for work, or get ambitious and try to bury this piece of shit. I chose the latter, and then, like a gift from the heavens, Declan handed me the loaded gun. During our next stock shift, he made a passing remark. "We have to start nailing this stock take down to the last popcorn kernel," he said. "The yearly stock take is in 6 weeks, and Ms. Walsh is doing it herself. She's a ball breaker." Oh, I knew all about her. She was the one who ripped me to pieces in the interview. I put on my best helpful face. "Don't worry, Declan. I'm on the case. Those numbers will be perfect." And then he went for the Oscar with his reply: "You're a good worker. It's a fucking travesty you didn't get the manager's job, but when I get the hot seat, you'll be made a manager as soon as a position comes up. No interview required." What a prick. My revenge began. I had become so good at the stock take that he didn't even bother checking my work anymore. I was making the orders and counting the stock. So, over the next 6 weeks, I started to systematically fuck shit up. Our weekly orders went in on a Wednesday for a Friday delivery. Normally, I'd eyeball our needs based on upcoming films, keeping just enough stock on hand, not too much, not too little. That was about to change. I started adding 25% to every single item on the order. I'd show Declan the dockets. He'd sign them without a second glance. Happy days. Then, when I did the stock count on Thursday, I would input the usual amount into the computer system. So on paper, the system was perfectly balanced. In reality, our stockrooms were beginning to overflow. I did this for 4 weeks straight. I was royally fucked if he ever took a single step into the stockrooms to check. But luckily for me, and unluckily for him, he was a lazy man. The rooms were nearly exploding with product. It was the final week before Ms. Walsh, the ball breaker, was due to conduct the end-of-year stock take. I balanced the computer system as usual. Before we finished up for the night, I told him to check the pre-sales for the weekend. We were going to be slammed. I laid the final piece of my trap. "You should probably email our suppliers and get a bit extra in," I said casually. "It'll all get used anyway, and we're looking perfect on the stock count." Granted, I had already been adding 25% for a month, but Declan, in his infinite arrogance, went ultra blobby and banged out an emergency email to our suppliers, asking them to double the entire standing order for the next day. And just like that, the trap was set. With a single, greedy email, Declan had signed his own professional death certificate. Check. Fucking mate. When I got home that night, I typed up my resignation letter. I went to Mr. O'Connell, who had a couple of weeks left, and asked if I could leave immediately due to unforeseen circumstances. Being the good man he was, he agreed, gave me his personal number and an amazing written reference, and wished me the best. Like Andy Dufresne, I had crawled through a river of shit and come out clean on the other side. Over a couple of pints, I confided in a coworker I trusted about what I'd done. He told me that when the delivery arrived the next day, it was pure chaos. They couldn't fit it all in the 4 different stockrooms. As a rule of thumb, we kept about 3 weeks of stock on hand. Thanks to my efforts, they must have had about 8. The yearly stock take with MS. Walsh apparently went into the wee hours of the morning, finishing at 3 a.m. The numbers were a complete clusterfuck, off by tens of thousands of euro. Declan was boxed in. He had 2 choices: take the blame himself and look catastrophically incompetent, or admit that he'd let me, the man he personally slandered, run the entire stock operation without any supervision, which would look even worse. As one commenter later perfectly put it, he blocked my promotion, so I blocked his. It was the fair trade and karma he had coming. I don't know exactly what story he went with. All I know is that he did not get the GM position. Within 6 months, he was out of the company and working in a furniture store. I hope he knows it was me who fucked him over. I truly hope he understands that he sealed his own fate with his pettiness. Fuck you, Declan, you rotund, walking bean bag. Ultimately, this was a masterclass in karmic retribution. It just goes to show that when you try to build your own success on the sabotage of others, you're often just digging your own professional grave. So, what do you think? Was the revenge perfectly executed, or did I take it a step too far? Let me know your thoughts.